Welcome back to Walsall Fan TV, Walsall Fan TV Insights. And today we're talking to Gab Sutton. How you doing, Gabriel?
Hi, Simon. Lovely to be on the show.
It's so good to have you back. And what we're going to talk about today is Walsall, obviously, what we think about the revamped squad. And then we're going to have a look over your publication of predictions. We're not going to rib you for putting Walsall 10th, but we're just having a bit of a chat through those.
Yeah, do you know, Simon, I came very close to putting Walsall 7th, but I still think a top 10 finish would be a decent season. I'd be really interested to hear from any Saddlers fans in the comments what you think about that. But I think if you finish 10th, I think that would be a progressive campaign.
Yeah, I think for me, anything above 12th is a good season. If we can make it into the top 7 and have some playoff fun, that would be excellent. And top 3 would be sort of dream territory, really. But we do desperately want to get back into League One, particularly with Port Vale going up. That was torture. And Bristol Rovers, of course, them going up. The 2 games we played against Bristol Rovers, we lost both. And I just don't know how we lost both. We should.
Well, the one at your place was 2 goals in the last 2 minutes or something, wasn't it?
Yeah. They were awful. And they beat us. And then at their place, we had a guy sent off on half time or something like that, and couldn't beat him. So it was hard to comprehend, really. First one we've got in here is that Walsall will finish 5th. That's a good one, and up the Saddlers from Maz. But yeah, when we go on Wednesday, we talked about how the squad's changed. Carl Rushworth obviously did very well for us last season, but he was an inexperienced keeper, and he did very well. I think Owen Evans is a step up on Carl Rushworth on the basis that he's got more experience around him. He's been part of a League 2 team that's got promoted. And he's quite highly sought of. There were comments from the Cheltenham fans that his distribution wasn't very good. But from what we've seen in pre-season, I don't see major issues there. Maybe they expect more.
Yeah, I think the other issue that he had at Cheltenham was that they rotated the goalkeeper a lot last season. So sometimes it was Owen Evans and sometimes it was Scott Flinders. And I think there was some talk that maybe the fact that they changed the goalkeeper regularly meant that there were issues in terms of, I suppose, cohesion and communication and relationships and things like that, that, you know, all the intangibles that it's difficult to know how much weight to put on. But I agree with you. I think he's proven to be an excellent goalkeeper at this level. Fantastic when Cheltenham reached the playoffs at this level a few seasons ago now. I think it's a good signing, and I think if he hadn't had a tough season last year, you wouldn't be able to get him in League 2, would you? So fingers crossed he does well, and he's got pedigree at this level.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. The backup keeper, Sibek, hasn't impressed over much, but I think he is a young keeper and he's one to develop rather than sort of rotate, I think. So he's there for emergencies rather than anything else, I think.
Yeah, and he's a young lad, isn't he? I would expect Owen Evans to go in very much as first choice, but hopefully Sibek can provide some sort of competition. And obviously when he gets his chances in cup games or whatever else, he's going to have to take them.
Yeah. Defence-wise, Roland Mayonnaise, he's gone to Hartlepool on loan. He was a really strange one for us because when he was on loan to us, he was excellent. We gave him a contract and then he was all over the shop. So I thought he was going to stay as backup because we haven't got a lot of backup for centre half. So I'm surprised he went out, but I think he sort of, Mike Flynn wanted his own men in, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I would say central defence is probably one of the stronger points. If you think about it in terms of Walsall playing a back three, then that means Hayden White's then in the equation as
Yeah,
a centre half. Who else? You got Peter Clark, you got Donovan Daniels, you got Manny Monthé,
yeah,
and then you've also got Oisin McKenty, who's supposed to have some very good reviews. I think he came from Newcastle, I think from the Northern Ireland setup as well. Has he played for Northern Ireland at one of the youth groups? I think so.
yeah. He was at Greenock Morton last season in the
Greenock
Scottish
Morton.
Championship. He had a shoulder injury, so he's not going to be in the picture. I think the main back three will be Daniels, Clark, and Month, and Hayden White. I think is going to be deployed as right wing back, but he will be the cover man if we need another man at centre half until
And
McKenzie.
you've got a couple of players, haven't you, who can play right wing back as well.
Yeah,
So
well,
that
yeah,
means
Liam
that White
Bennett.
can play on the right.
Liam Bennett. When we signed him, just 14 appearances, I think it was for Newport. I thought he'd very much be backup, but
No, Cambridge.
Cambridge, sorry, yeah, from
Yeah.
Cambridge. I thought he'd very much be backup, but he's been very impressive. Hayden White, I think, is going to be the starter.
Yeah, well, just if I can jump in on that, I think that sometimes when you loan a player from one division above rather than two or three, I think we can sometimes make the assumption that, well, if they were that good, why isn't the team from the division above sort of why are they loaning him out? But I think the reason for that is very much that Mark Bonner, who's Cambridge manager, first of all, he's in one of the more secure jobs in football, so he probably has a little bit more freedom to think in terms of what's best for the long-term players' development as opposed to the selfish side of what's going to benefit my team in the next 12 months.
Yeah.
But also, Liam Bennett did play really well at the back end of last season with Cambridge. He's left-footed, but he plays predominantly at right back, and he can play at left back as well, and obviously either wing back position. So yeah, he's shown lots of promise in League One, and I think a full season in League Two would do wonders for his development. So I think that's an exciting addition.
Yeah. I like him. On the other side, we thought Liam Gordon would be the first choice, but with the injury he's received, Taylor Allen has got the starting berth, I think. And again, he's looked very good. He was a striker turned winger turned defender. So you'll probably be
if you're going to be a goalkeeper next.
Yeah. But against the Villa, Stephen commented on the Villa match reaction. One Villa player bounced off him, and then two came at him, and two bounced off him against the Villa. So like, he doesn't look like a tank, but I mean, he's very stable, and he likes to cut inside and drive forward rather than just sort of going down the line, and that looks really good. That does. I'm really liking the look of him there.
Yeah, that sounds really hopeful, and I think that could be a theme in terms of cutting inside. The wing backs cutting inside could be a theme, because if you have Bennett on one side and Taylor Allen on the other, then it's going to be quite hard for opposing teams to know what to expect from the wing backs, because they're starting in those wide positions. But then if they're cutting inside, then you've got the possibility of midfielders either overloading the flank or a wide centre back overlapping as well. I think especially if Hayden White plays as the right centre back at times, I think that's going to be a real option. So some really exciting opportunities, I think, for those sort of interesting patterns of play, and I think the wing backs could be a big part of that.
Yeah, the central midfield, we've suddenly got a wealth of options there. Kinsella, who's been man of the sort of player of the season for the last two seasons. Some argue that it's a testament to how poor Walsall have been that somebody who's not scored or had an assist has been man of the player of the season for 2 games running. But I mean, his tenacity in the midfield and his ability to win the ball back countless times makes him a big player for Walsall. But Brandon Comley, he's one that's come in, and mixed views on him. I didn't particularly rate him to start with, but a couple of the other guys are sort of quite liking the look of him. And Joe Riley, he's got an injury. I don't think he's going to be away for too long. again, he's another massive addition there in the sort of defensive sort of and moving forward sort of box to box kind of midfielders. And then the likes of Isaac Hutchinson looks a tremendous player. I know it's hard before you've seen him in competitive games, but he really does look a major find for us. What do you know about Isaac?
Well, I know it's interesting actually because I think Michael Flynn, when he first came in, described him as a box-to-box midfielder. That hadn't been how I'd understood Hutchinson, because I think when Forest Green signed him on loan from Derby a couple of years ago, he was kind of replacing Carl Winchester, who was more the one collecting the ball off the defence and getting play going from there. So that, I suppose, that shows that Hutchinson has a fair range of qualities. And again, it's probably going to be the same with Joe Riley, probably the same with Grant and Comley. These are midfielders who you wouldn't want to kind of pigeonhole them as any one thing. They seem to be able to do a mix of different things. Comley, I think, probably has a point to prove in EFL terms. Had a pretty mixed stint by all accounts at Dagenham last year. Some fans liked him, other fans maybe weren't so keen. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. But yeah, I think do you know what I like about Walsall's additions, Simon, is in the squad that you've put together, is that there's no sort of individual stars that you think is going to really steal all the headlines. But I think in all the positions, there's quite a narrow gap in quality between the first choice that you've got and the second choice. So it's like everywhere you look, there's going to be really strong competition. And I think because of that, the standards is going to drive everyone up. So I think that's going to be the big hope.
I think you're quite right. That's important. I think at the manager meeting on Monday, he said every player in the squad thinks they got every player but one. I think he was on about Sibek when he said that, but I think expects to start on Saturday. And really, I've sort of in my match preview, I've sort of picked a squad or picked a team to start, but really, it is of the players that are fit. It's a good bag to be picking from, to be honest. I think. And Ronan Mayer, he's one that sort of he did really well with the reserves. I think 23 goals he scored for the reserves last season, and for somebody who's not an out and out centre forward, that's a great return. And largely for a 17-year-old, he was playing against under 23s and adults effectively. So he's certainly able to compete, and he could be a massive find for Walsall. And I think as the season progresses, he could be a regular starter. But who's he going to displace if he is the question.
Well, and also the other thing is, I think Ronan Mayer would see himself as a number 10 from what's been described of him. So then in that case, does Michael Flynn go with the classic 4-4-2, 3-5-2 that it's kind of looked like he's been trying to build, because he's brought there's a lot of midfielders in this squad, or does he go for 3-4-1-2 with maybe one number 10, or does he go for a 3-1-4-2 with sort of Kinsella at the base and two number 8s, of which Mayer might have a chance of being one of them if he feels Mayer can play slightly deeper. I'd be interested to get any Sadler's views on that. But I think we talk about the new players that have come in, but I think it's easy to forget that, there's also some good players still from the squad last season, and I include in that Kinsella and Jack Earing, of course.
Yeah, he's had a little injury, Jack Earing, hasn't he? But he's sort of behind on the fitness terms because he had a bit of an injury. But again, it's like, is Jack Earing, who was perhaps the star of the midfield as far from an attacking perspective last season, is he going to get a start this season? That's because when Riley's fit. When Riley's fit, Riley, Hutchinson, Comley, Kinsella, they're starting to add up there. And as you say, lots of competition in that vital area. And I think the five subs thing's going to help with that and be a bit of rotation in there. But I think in some of the pre-season, the Walsall midfield have been rotating as well. which is good. So we're not sort of as you say, not pigeonholing players into a certain role. So maybe trying to get more out of Kinsella this season, because he really does need to sort of add more to his game. What he does at the
Do you
moment.
think so, though? I mean, I know people talk about Liam Kinsella as, a ball winner. From what I've seen of Liam Kinsella, he's also quite a cultured ball player as well. I think he's underrated technically, in my opinion. But I think that if you had that and he had goals to his game, you're probably not going to have him playing in League Two.
Well,
so
that's
I
me.
would
I think if he's gonna progress as a player, he needs to add goals or assists to his game.
I don't know if I agree with you on that, Simon. I think he's a good League Two midfielder as he is. Of course, in terms of professional pride and all the rest of it, he's going to want to try to add those things to his game. But is he capable of being a good player at this level without scoring many goals? I think he is. I think it's a question of, can you get goals in other areas? But you've added a couple of box-to-box options in and around Kinsella, and you've got players who can pop up with goals. So I wouldn't mind just having Kinsella in a deeper position where he isn't going to get into the box so much, but he can still control games, he can
just
conduct
do what
the
he
play,
does good. Yeah.
And he can break things up. That would be my perspective on it.
Yeah, just do what he does good and not sort of get carried away with anything else.
Yeah, I think you want to try and focus on what he does well, on what he can do, as opposed to what he hasn't done so far. Now, if he does become a fantastic goal scoring midfielder on top of what he'd already does, then great. But I think as well that the kind of position on the pitch that he plays, he's not going to be the one that breaks into the box and gets those close range chances. So you're kind of looking at him taking shots from distance. And even if he gets 5 or 6 goals as a result of taking 40 shots from range, would he not be better off giving the ball to more creative players who are more likely to create something better?
Yeah,
so I'm quite relaxed about that one.
I think as Neil Adams has commented, he's obtained his legend status without the goals and assists.
Yeah,
which is.
But I mean, Claude Makelele scored 1 goal for Chelsea when they won the league in 04-05, and that was he was asked to take the penalty against Charlton, and he hit the post and he scored the rebound. So that was 1 goal. I mean, if Liam Kinsella can score 1 goal this season, but he continues to break up the play brilliantly and conduct the play as well, I think Walsall fans should be pretty happy with that.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, as you say, it's understanding what he's good at. The Jack Shaw was one player who came through at the end of last season, but he seems to have sort of disappeared back to the reserves for the time being.
I've not come across Jack Shaw yet. Talk to me about him.
He's a central midfield player. He had a couple of games at the end of the season, and to be honest, he didn't particularly impress. But I mean, it was an awkward time of the season, really. So I don't think he'll be grabbing a spot at the moment with the quality we've got in the midfield now.
Yeah, it's so competitive, isn't it?
Yeah, very competitive. I've got a question here, but I'm going to hold it off for a second. Up front, with Andy Williams, a very astute signing. Danny Johnson, we've only got him on loan for 6 months. That's a bit of a frustrating one because we're trying to get a 2-year deal over the line. But for Walsall to have 2 experienced strikers up front is like a lottery win almost, because we've been so starved of strikers the last few years. So I think that's a great solid base. And then Timmy Abraham, he's one of those players who could wallow around and never be any good, or could click and be sensational. And let's hope it's the latter. JT Taylor, Douglas James Taylor from Stoke. Do you know anything about him?
Yeah, from what I did he had a really good goal scoring record. Was it something like 16 goals? I think he scored for their under-23s last season, or something along those.
I think he did quite well.
Yeah, so really good goal scoring record. So I think that's really exciting, and he's going to be quick. He can get in behind. So I think by the looks of things, you're probably going to be looking at trying to pair an experienced striker like an Andy Williams with someone that's a bit nippier who can get in behind.
Yeah,
Or there's even times where you could maybe look at using Andy Williams off the bench because he can bring that bit of know-how, holding the ball
yeah,
up. He's a tall striker. He's not a. I think sometimes where people have gone wrong with Andy Williams in the past is assuming that he's a target man because he's tall.
yeah,
He's not a target man. He's actually quite. I think he's quite a lanky striker, and but I think he's definitely best giving him the ball to feet. But I rate him in terms of link-up play. There was a spell in
yeah.
Cheltenham's
Very good. Yeah,
title-winning season a couple of years ago where a couple of their other strikers were out, and he linked up quite nicely with George Lloyd, and he can finish as well. He's done that more often than not at this level in his career. So I can definitely see the benefits of that signing, and there's a nice sort of mix of qualities as well in the strikers that you brought in. So I think that's encouraging.
yeah. I think that's interesting. Actually, I was thinking be starting with Williams and Johnson, and then maybe later on bringing on Abraham and JT. Sort of like last 15, 20 minutes, bringing on the pace and exuberance. But I think splitting now, it might make more sense to split those. In fairness, I think.
But just on Danny Johnson, if I can, I think he's one that I really didn't work out for him at Mansfield so much, but I really liked the look of him at Leyton Orient the year before, and I remember watching him in this game against Bolton. Orient won 4-0 this one, and Danny Johnson missed the penalty or had a penalty saved inside the first minute or so, and you could tell from that he just wasn't phased by the penalty miss, and then he scored a few minutes after that and ended up having a really good game. He's a really persistent runner. He can get in behind, and he's a really good finisher as well. So I think if you give him chances, he's going to deliver.
Yeah, I think quite often last season we sort of create the balls flying across the box, just needing somebody to tuck them in again and again and again. And George Miller should have been that guy, and that's something he needs to add to his game. But more on George Miller later. I think a question from Jordan Hunt. Who would you say is the best signing? I've got mine in my head.
Okay, that's a really good really good question. Who do I really like as the signings? Do you know? I think it comes back partly to what I've said earlier, where I think they're all pretty good signings. None of them absolutely. There's no kind of sexy headline additions that kind of leap off the page, but they're all pretty good signings. So a lot of them, I'm going to go with Danny Johnson because I can see him scoring a lot of goals. Also, I think that Peter Clark, can he bring that sort of bit of leadership and nous to the table? I think in the middle of a back three, that's going to work for him because there's no risk of him getting caught out into those wide 1v1 duels because he's going to have a wide centre back either side of him. So maybe he can bring that experience and nous as well, even at 40 years of age.
Yeah, got you. I'm kind of split as well. I think in some ways Owen Evans is one of the big signings, and Isaac Hutchinson. But we remain obviously when the real football starts, that's when we find out who the best signing was.
Yeah,
it's all right looking good in pre-season, isn't it? We have had an extra striker that's joined us, Jonas Makuna. I'm not sure whether you know much about him.
I hadn't heard of the man 10 seconds ago, so
I think people that I, for one, sort of misunderstood the situation because we had some trialists in, and I saw him against the Villa and he looked awful. I saw him against Coventry and he looked off the pace, and then against Telford, he had a golden opportunity against Telford and fluffed his lines. And it was like, why is this guy here? And then I found out yesterday at the point where he was signing that he's only 17. So I think you can forgive a lot of that. And I think he's probably more of a development player. So maybe he's one for the future. He's certainly not one that's going to get started.
just on that, I think that that's going to be one of the big things for Walsall going forward, because Ben Boycott's obviously got a lot of ambition for the club, but part of that ambition is the long term future of the club, and I think it's investing in players that might not necessarily serve the next 12 months, but that can still play a part in the long term future, and hopefully this lad can do that.
Yeah, I think one comment Lee Reynolds has made, the feel-good factor around the club and everybody pulling in the same direction, that can't be understated, really. I think I think you sort of alluded to that in a bit of your sort of League Two preview.
Yeah,
There's a lot of
I
good things happening, and things have started to turn the right direction, I think.
I think, and I'm not going to say this lightly, if I'm going to make a prediction about Ben Boycott's era as co-chair of Walsall, I think that Walsall could be on the cusp of the most exciting era since the Ray Graydon days.
Yeah,
And the reason I say that is because under Jeff Bonser, you could have the odd one-off good season, or you could find the odd one-off good manager like a Dean Smith, for example, and the
yeah,
15-16 campaign was a fantastic team, but it was never sustainable, because after that
no,
all the players left and the whole thing just crumbled, and you
yeah,
hadn't really recovered from that. What I love about Ben Boycott is, first of all, he's made a real effort to connect with supporters. He understands what he's safeguarding. He talked about the importance of owning the stadium. I think that's a huge thing.
yeah,
I absolutely love the way he talks about the club, and I'm so excited. Obviously, he's got to deliver as well. I'm not an idiot, but I love the signs and the vibes that I get about Ben Boycott so far and what his intentions are.
yeah,
So, from my point of view, that's very encouraging. And yeah, I think that now you've got a really good manager in Michael Flynn, who's delivered a great escape at Newport and 2 player finals in 4 seasons on one of the lowest budgets. That was
yeah,
an extraordinary achievement. So you've got the combination of what I think will be a great chair and a great manager. I think long term that could take you a long way.
yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. It's exciting times. I think previously we have a good season, and then because everybody's on short-term contracts, any player that does well is just pulled away. And with a bit more stability financially, that's going to protect against that. Obviously, if somebody come in for big money, then it makes commercial sense to let them move on at the right time. So
And that's what you want,
hopefully,
isn't it?
yeah,
Like, because obviously Walsall are going to be a selling club to some degree, because that's how you fund yourself. So I think it's a good thing if you can sell your players for big fees and then use that money to reinvest over the course of the club. I think that's a model that so many clubs should be looking at. So it's all about sustainable growth, really.
yeah, gradually that's starting to happen. In the Bonser days, anybody offered any money, you'd be like, yeah, okay, you can have them, you can have them, you can
Mm.
have them. And then that's sort of, Lee Pomlet was sort of trying to, and pulling that round better, and we've started to get longer contracts, a bit more stability and forward thinking, which is good. It'd be nice if some of our young guns get tied up on longer term contracts just to protect them, really, from being
Mm.
whisked away. But of course, you can't sort of put too much money in them. You don't know what division you're going to be in. You don't know what their long term development's where it's going to go.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I just on that actually, I know I've had my criticisms of Pomlet on 1 or 2 things previously, but I would like to say he did incredibly well to get that, to get Ben Boycott
yeah,
get the involvement, and a lot was involved in terms of that process of the various different legal and financial complications to get that deal over the line, and Pomlet's done very well in that regard, and
yeah.
I think it's fantastic that Walsall have Ben Boycott on board. So credit to Pomlet on that one.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think everybody makes mistakes, and when you're in a high profile position, those mistakes are sort of prodded and pointed at. But I think we all make mistakes. There's one comment in the comment here from George Dobson. I don't think it's the George Dobson that played for us. He's referring to the predictions I made for players coming in, and largely most of them were incorrect. But But I think the only one that I predicted that actually came true was Joe Riley. I had word that James Norwood was going to be joining us. I've broken a rule now. I said I wasn't going to mention him again. But it's a difficult one, isn't it, with all the transfer rumours and little whispers and that sort of thing. And you can have a player that's due to join you and then sort of another offer comes in and he's gone again. So it's a difficult game, that one.
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited to see how Joe Riley comes in. Actually, yeah, I think there was a time when him and John Mellish and Callum Guy formed a really good midfield trio for Carlisle. Hopefully, he can get back to that form. But yeah, he's a very versatile, energetic player. Joe Riley. He can also play in as a right wing back, so he'd be a cover option there as well. So I think that versatility could be handy too. But yeah, he'll bring a lot of energy to that midfield.
Yeah, I think he only scored 3 last season, but 2 of them were goal of the season contenders, weren't they?
Yeah.
I saw the Carlisle goal of the season competition. He scored some buttes. Kind of Kinsella strike, that would be rare and special. I'm just reading this one as we go, so this is dangerous. Neil Adams baffles me why successful managers believe in players like Josh Labadie further forward than Earing. Labadie is one of the worst signings in years. Big reputation and 0 delivery. That's a bit harsh, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, I think obviously Josh Labadie struggled last season, and I think it's partly because he's been hit by injuries so much, and I think that's affected issues for him like agility. So if he goes after a challenge on one moment, then he can find it difficult to then charge back and get back into position and that kind of thing. But I think the reason why some managers prefer a really athletic player in a more advanced position than a more technical player is because the athletic player can really contribute something to the press and the more technical player can get on the ball more. I think that's the theory. Now, did it work with Josh Labadie and Jack Earing last season? I think Walsall fans will have to comment on that, but I think that's the theory.
Yeah, I think for us it was frustrating because we knew that Jack Earing was a good cam and he was just playing too deep all the time. But I think the season in a sort of defensive midfield role will probably improve his abilities long term. And when he comes back, it'll be nice if he is deployed further forward because Labadie and Kinsella have both been deployed further forward and it hasn't worked. But I understand where you're coming from with the press, though, so that makes sense. Sense. Where's the next question? 1 second. Somebody's saying I should check Twitter. I think that's probably something to do with Jonas Makuna. So we'll check that out after. So, right then, we'll move very quickly on to your League 2 previews. You've got Stockport, Bradford and Salford right up there. But
not as my top 3 though.
No, yeah, your top 3. No, I was just looking at the odds on there. Sorry, the Tranmere to win it, Mansfield and Stockport. I had Stockport; they were my shout for the top.
Okay.
Mansfield, anybody who can let Danny Johnson go to a competitor, they must have a decent squad together. And Tranmere Rovers have been knocking at the gate a long time, haven't they?
Yeah, I think Tranmere have going with a younger squad this year, and I think maybe they're not as fancied for that reason because I think for us as neutrals, we sometimes look at it as I recognise that player because he's done this before at this club. Tranmere don't have so much of that in terms of the players that they've recruited, so they don't have quite so many veterans. They let Peter Clark go to your lot as well. But I think they're going to play with a high line this year, and I think they're going to put teams under a lot of pressure. So I'm really excited to see how they get on. Stockport as well, fantastic in the National League. Dave Chandler's won 7 promotions in his non-league career. Can he convert that into the EFL? And Mansfield under Nigel Clough, another experienced manager. So they will be my 3.
Yeah, I think, as you mentioned with Stockport, I think teams coming up from the National League as opposed to teams coming down from League One, I think the teams from the National League are more likely to do well than the League One teams coming down in some respects. It's about momentum, and I think people think some people still think the National League is sort of a bunch of part-timers. It's far from that. It's they've all got more money than most League Two clubs. A lot of them, haven't
Yeah.
they?
Yeah, well, that's the thing as well, isn't it? Because I think Sky Sports take the EFL package, but they're kind of interested in the Championship mainly, unless it's Salford. Whereas actually BT Sport take on the National League. But I would like to see League 1 2 get some TV games like BT Sport do with the National League.
Yeah, that'd be good. That'd be good. Let's have a look. Grimsby 7th. That's sort of one that we've talked about with sort of like the non-league teams coming up and doing solid.
Yeah, it's a bit of a shout. I do like the new ownership structure they've got though, and there's a really good feel around the club, and that's something that I put a lot of weight on as well, because if there's a lot of positivity among the fan base, that can really translate to the players. So that's a big thing for me when it comes to Grimsby.
Yeah, I think that's what Mick Flynn is sort of trying to breed within the Walsall fan base as well. We're all in this together. And what he mentioned at the Meet the Manager was the psychological side of the game, which it surprised me in some ways. When Mike Flynn first came in, I thought he was a bit of a sort of not exactly a bully boy. That would be incorrect to say that. But I mean, a very hard taskmaster. But he's a very intelligent guy. And I think he's a great guy to have in charge. So I'm really chuffed with him there. Northampton, I think you agree with me, I think, on that one. 8th, you've got them as 8th. I think they are weakened this season, I think. With Horsfall going, that's a big part of their centre-half pairing sort of messed up. And he went to Stockport, of course. Liam Roberts, he did very, very well for them.
Yeah.
So that's one of the teams that we need to try and finish above, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think I had Northampton 8th. A lot of people would have Northampton higher, and they've certainly recruited some proven players as well. Danny Hilton's won promotion from this level before, so has Lee Burge, the goalkeeper they've signed. But yeah, and they've brought in a couple of defenders as well to replace Fraser Horsfall. So I think they've got a good squad on paper, and certainly going to be one of the teams you're going to have to try and look to finish above.
Many people have got Bradford as favourites for the title, and you've got them down in lowly 9th. Is that purely down to the fact that they signed Ousa DB?
Well, I mean, you joke, but I do think that about half the signings for Bradford I really like and I think could make a real impression. Half of them, and probably ACDB would come into this category where I'm not quite sure I agree with the talk that's around them. And I add that to, I think at Bradford City, there's always going to be so much expectation for them in League Two. They're always going to be held to the standards of the best teams at this level. Yeah. And I think that's going to be
you want to beat. I think the big game, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think there is that factor. Whereas I suppose there isn't quite so much of that, I suppose, if you're playing Walsall.
What do you mean? Walsall is the big team. I think Walsall probably get that for some of the teams when playing like Sutton and that sort of thing.
Or Harrogate, yeah.
I've got to agree with you there, really. Swindon, they obviously Ben Garner, wasn't it? He's moved on now, and he's took Jack Payne with him. Jack Payne, that's a big loss for them, I think. And Josh Davison as well. I thought he'd signed for Swindon, but he was just on loan, wasn't he? So he's
he's gone to Wimbledon on loan now. It's going to be interesting to see how Swindon go, because they've gone very young in terms of the recruitment, kind of pretty much mainly players from under 23 setups elsewhere, but a lot of them are permanent deals as well. So
Yeah.
I think that what they're trying to do is just build a squad after relying a lot on loans last season. They're trying to build
Yeah.
a squad with some value in it. So even if it doesn't go to plan this season, they've still got the means to generate some capital next summer and then go from there. But they've also signed experience in Angus MacDonald, who was at was it Rotherham? So experienced centre back, yeah.
Yeah. Hartlepool, I think they. We can't talk about Hartlepool because they're playing Walsall. We don't have any bad vibes. So Crawley, that was a strange one. They got Dom Telford. Why did Dom Telford go to Crawley? What do you reckon?
Well, I think the money is a factor. I'm not a huge fan of Crawley's owners. They've brought in these US cryptocurrency investors called
Cryptocurrencies, yeah.
Preston Johnson and Eben Smith. But I don't know if you saw on the Wagme United's sort of Twitter page, they just did this really weird video about Carlisle United. You'll have to check it out. It's very strange. So yeah, they're a slightly odd bunch. But they are able to bring in quality. Dom Telford scored 25 goals last season. They'll be hoping they can create the chances for him to do something similar this time around.
I think with Dom Telford, I think his previous record before last season wasn't too great. So is it a breakthrough of his abilities, or is it a one-off?
Well, I think the thing for me about Dom Telford is he plays best when he's playing as part of the front two. He's got a physical strike partner, and he's playing in a really attacking team that creates a lot of chances. That was the case for him at Bury a few seasons ago when he scored 20, 25 goals for them that year. Then after that, he had a bit of a dry patch before hitting it off again at Newport County. But yeah, I think that's the key for Dom Telford. It's about the system and it's about how you use him. He's not the one that's going to create chances for himself. You need to create chances for him. But if you do that, he can put them away.
Yeah. Sometimes if you've got the right system, the guy that's putting the ball in the net isn't necessarily the star, is he?
Mm. That's true.
But I mean, if you do put 25 away, you're obviously got something about you.
Yeah. Yes.
Moving on to what now? This is the one I disagree with you on. AFC Wimbledon. Now, going against what I said about teams coming down, I think Wimbledon are going to be challenging.
Okay.
I think on your review, I'm not sure whether it was a deliberate omission or not, but it's Kyle Hudlin and Josh Davison up front. That's going to be difficult to contain for anybody, I think.
Yeah, I'm slightly skeptical about Hudlin because I think the fact that he's 6'9" and the fact that that's such an unusual height means that does give someone a certain amount of attention. But the odd thing is that, and a lot of people who've watched Carl Hudlin would say that despite that incredible height, that being so unusual, he's not actually a target man, which seems incredible to think. But a lot of people think that it's actually about his technical ability. That's more his game, and that actually, if you use him, if you ask him to be an aerial reference point, he's not actually as good at that as you might expect. Other people who've watched the National League haven't necessarily given him sort of glowing reviews. So I'm not 100% on board with Hudlin, but I think with Josh Davison, I think if you give the ball to his chest, to his feet, to his shoulder, I think from there he can bring some good link-up play and hopefully bring Ayuba Sal into the game, who's another one I think could really light up the League Two this year. But I think when it comes to Wimbledon, the big concern for them is they finished last season 27 games unbeaten. That's a lot of games. 27 winless, should I say. It's a lot of games, and I think that's the
mentality, isn't it?
It's
the mentality of breaking that run of defeat, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think they've got to get their first win early as well, because you don't want it to slide into 28 games, 29 games, 30 winless, because then the new season optimism turns into turns into a bit of the pessimism from last season. So
Yeah.
that would be a bit of a concern.
I think a similar situation is with Doncaster. Doncaster, of course, have taken George Miller on board. So the classic Walsall, I'm just trying to Dale Banton. You're probably far too young to remember that name. He was a player Walsall bought from Oxford many years ago. I think it must have been late 80s, I think. And we looked at it. I think he'd only scored 5 or 6 goals, I think, for Oxford. And it was like, yeah, but that was in a team that was struggling. And then when he joined Walsall, we realised why they'd struggled is because he would be playing for them. and saying that with George Miller, now I'm people are divided on opinion here for this, because some people say George Miller only got 12 goals because he didn't get many chances, but I think he missed a lot of chances. And I think he went like 18 games without a goal, and then he got one that I think it was a Zach Mills shot, hit his hip and went off his hip and went into the goal, and he ran up and down the pitch like he'd scored a worldie. So he's one of those confidence players. What's your thoughts on George Miller?
I think that there's a world in which he really catches fire this season, and because I think what I like about George Miller is that he's just a relentless runner. He never stops. He's a real pressing forward, and I think that when you do that as a striker, you can. For a time, you can get away with not scoring because you're so likable to fans, I think, and I think that that's something that can kind of keep you going and keep you positive. Whereas if you're just a languid poacher that waits for the chances and you're not scoring, then that's probably more of a problem for fans, and then that can be a problem. So I think George Miller will keep going. He'll never give up, and I think from that there's a chance that once he gets a couple of goals early doors, maybe things could spiral for him. Having said that, Doncaster are a team I have a lot of reservations about. Had a fair bit of stick off their fans as well, so we'll have to see. We'll have to see how things go for them.
Well, I think the George Miller, I think we had a player similar to him in some respects. Flash Gordon, Josh Gordon. He went to Barrow, and for Walsall, he was the willing runner, and he was almost scared to go into the box. And for a centre forward, that's not a great task. But he's gone to Barrow and hasn't particularly done well at Barrow. I don't know how many goals he scored for Barrow last season, but I mean, he didn't light it up.
No, I don't think he's got many.
I think George Miller is a better player, and I think he probably will score probably around that kind of total again, about 12, 15 goals, I think. But Doncaster, as you say, I think they may struggle. Crewe, that's another team coming down. Can they avoid the slide?
Yeah, it's a big question. I think Crewe have strengthened their attack. They've added Baker Richardson, who was one we'd talked about as well as a possible Walsall signing. I think him and Dan Ajayi and Chris Long more than capable of doing damage. The question I would have for Crewe is that I don't really feel like the defence has been strengthened, which is a bit of a worry considering they conceded 77 goals last season. I still think they probably need a first choice goalkeeper as well. So a few question marks still for Crewe, and probably need to steady the ship after an awful campaign last year.
Yeah. Sutton. I thought I got Sutton in my mind for a top 7 or round about top 10 finish. They were very solid. I suppose the question is, second season, are they going to get found out a little bit?
I think that's the question. I think the 4-4-2 is quite an unusual formation in the modern game. Not many managers go with that nowadays, and I think part of the reason for that is because you need it asks so much of the wide midfielders because they've got to protect the fullbacks, but then they've also got to be right up there, joining in with the forwards as well. And sometimes that can, if they get caught between the two a little bit, then that can leave the midfielders isolated a little bit. And now they've lost David Adjaboy. That's the worry for me. Are they going to have a bit of a drop off?
Yeah, I was hoping we'd get. I've said it. I've started it now, and I forgot his name. The cam for him, is it?
So there's Omar Bougil. There's Will Randall Harron, who's plays on the
Alistair
left.
Smith.
Oh, Alistair Smith.
Yeah. He's one I thought we'd have a chance of getting. He was out of contract, but that wasn't to be. But obviously, we've got more than enough attacking midfielders.
Yeah.
We just before we wind up for the day, Rochdale, Devant Rodney. Is he going to be able to lift them up by the coattails, or is if they're struggling, is he going to go and hide?
Well, this is the question. I think an angry Devante Rodney can do some damage at this level. I still remember him playing for Port Vale for a spell when he played in their 6-3 win at Bolton a couple of seasons ago and absolutely bullied Ricardo Santos, who was regarded as the best centre-back in the league. So I think that's what he can do at his very best. Now, obviously, there's been an inconsistency there for him over the last couple of years. How much of that are you going to put down to injury? I think that's a call. Probably didn't pull up trees for your lot when fit. But I think the hope is that...
I think nobody should criticise his time at Walsall because he wasn't fit. He never got fit and didn't really get a proper run. So I think nobody at Walsall will refer to him as a good player, but I think there is a lot of quality there. We just never saw it.
Yeah, well, hopefully Rochdale get that, and I think the potential is there. It's whether they can get that out of him.
That's it. And Colchester are the ones that look like they're in trouble.
I think them and Harrogate
got
are the
them
ones
down as my fit struggling as well.
Yeah, them and Harrogate, I think, are the ones that everyone seems to think are going down this year. I've got Harrogate staying up, but I think Walsall could finish bottom of the league. There's a bit of a malaise going around the club, and generally, if you feel like you're stuck and you're staying in one place, you're actually in danger of going backwards, and that will be the worry for me with Colchester, especially now they've lost Brendan Wiradu and Shamal George.
Yeah. Okay. Nice one. Well, we'll finalise there. For me, Walsall, I think your prediction of 10th is a reasonable call. But I think as you put in your comments, I will leave a link to the full detailed breakdown that Gabriel's done. It's well worth a read. As we say in there, with the tailing wind, we could see much better from Walsall. But I think the challenge, similar to at the start of last season, we had a very bad start, quite a lot of player changes. And again, at the start of this season, with 15 new heads coming in, it is going to be that bedding in period and how quickly we can get settled. That'll be the measure of whether Walsall is successful. Sort of how long it takes us to get up and running. But Gabriel, you are the knowledge on the lower leagues. So thank you very much for coming on the channel. And
cheers, Simon.
We're hoping for more joy than pain. We've had enough pain down Walsall.
Certainly have.
Brilliant. Thank you. Nice one. For everybody else watching, thanks for joining us. Like and subscribe and all that business. And join the journey. Thanks for watching.